the more cricket moves towards, players being free agents, the more I think you're going to definitely see that sort of tennis model. We've already seen it done really successfully in South Africa. Faf du Plessis has been a great example of a guy who effectively was free agent and has managed to play in a lot of leagues and played really well, arguably some of the best cricket of his career. So it certainly can be done. It's difficult to do. I think Dwayne Pretorius is another good example of a current player who's almost done that. Your example is perfect. The tennis player model, where you've got your own coach and your own trainer and your own and you're your own little business unit. And Dwayne Pretorius has basically done that. I mean, that's what he's worked out for himself, and he's still doing well in the leagues. I mean, in the CPL, he just had a fantastic CPL. So now got another SA20 contract, and so really in a good position, having gone in that free agency. So I do think that's already happening, and I think will be the model of how it potentially happens. Noise, too much noise can be just as bad as the best advice. I think whether it's a filtering, and I think that's what the best players do, they filter that information. Mm-hmm. A very well-meaning coach dumps 10 different ideas in their head, and they're able to sift through those and work out, actually, there's 8 that I need to ignore here. It was all well-meant, but 8 is not for me. These 2 little gems are for me. I'll incorporate those.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Stumped, a podcast that was conceived for me to waste the time of people who have better things to do than sit down and chat with me. And today, my victim is Stephen Cook. Stephen, hello and welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Always good to talk cricket. And I used to be quite a defensive batter, so I never really ventured out the crease to get stumped. So apt to be on this.
But you were run out in your first class encounter. I had to go back and check. Never stumped, but definitely run out.
Definitely run out, yeah. That was actually the worst type of dismissal. You really felt like you cheated yourself when you got run out. Especially on a spicy day.
And what was the abuse like after that run out, newbie, debut, and you get run out?
No, I don't remember actually getting any abuse off the back of that. I think, in a way, I was lucky when I made my debut for what was Gauteng back then. In that Gauteng had actually had a relatively poor season, and it was sort of the last couple of 4-day games of the year. So in a way, the pressure was sort of off. There was no title on the line or anything like that. And I think they used it as an opportunity to blood a few youngsters. And I got the opportunity to open the batting with Adam Bacher. And it was a dream come true. So getting run out was a bit disappointing. But there was actually quite a good sort of team environment there, where you sort of felt as a youngster, you're going to be given a couple of opportunities, and let's see where this goes. So I remember being pretty disappointed, but it turned out to be not the end of the world.
That is one of the things I wanted to discuss. The fact that you had, I think, Foosdale, who was the oldest member of the side, maybe 13, 14 years older than you. And there you are, 19-year-old coming in. I wanted to look at the importance of having solid, experienced people in the side along with the youngsters.
Yeah, 100% properly important. I don't think it can be ever overstated enough. It's all very good and well giving youngsters opportunities, and I'm all for it. But you need to provide the right platform and the right environment. And one of those key things is having experienced, solid players in the ability and in character around those youngsters. It just gives them such a better chance to succeed, gives them a role model, and it allows someone to feed back to them in real time. And this is where I almost feel like that senior pro, whether it be a bowler and the guy standing there at mid-on, or as a batter, you're out there in the middle with a senior player, is arguably more important than having the best coach in the world, because that feedback there can be instantaneous, in real time. How are you dealing with a situation? Whereas often with a coach, you'll have to make the mistake, get out, do something silly, then go and debrief it, then go and practice it, come back a week later and maybe try it again. Whereas with a senior player standing there right there next to you, and I've got countless examples of where I've seen it work successfully, that feedback is in a real time, and you get to try things out right there and then. So the learning curve is just so much quicker. And so, yeah, I mean, you mentioned Neil Fusedale, but I mean, there were a couple of really senior guys in that Gauteng team that I debuted in. Clive Eckstein, he was our captain. Adam Bacher, the year after that, Daryl Cullen played with us as well. So yeah, so lots of senior guys to sort of be around, and that was really a theme for me throughout. I mean, that Lions team thereafter, Neil McKenzie, you know, to back with those sort of guys was instrumental in sort of my development. And I think in many ways, if we just fast forward years down the line, the environment that was then created at the Lions, where we had McKenzie, myself as a senior player, Elviro Peterson, and then your Temba Bavumas, Rassi van der Dissens, and those youngsters started coming through. They almost had that same sort of learning cycle, and it's no miracle that sort of that age of batters who are now our senior Proteas batters in our sort of test and one-day team came out of those environments. And I mean, it wasn't just the Lions. In parallel, there was the same thing going on down at Western Province at the Cobras with the bowlers. I mean, you had Charles Langerveld and Alan Dawson and Charles Willoughby and those guys as senior bowlers, with your Philanders and Kleinfelds and those guys coming through. So it was the same thing that really happened. So yeah, senior players cannot be overstated. Yeah.
And you mentioned the value they have on the field. One other thing I was thinking about also was that, yes, back then it wasn't as professional as it is now, but they also brought that professionalism, how to carry yourself as a professional athlete in their own times. That, that is because, times have changed so much, but there was always that level of, this is how you carry yourself. This is how you handle yourself, even off the field, that guidance.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. When I came into the game, sort of 2000, 2001, sort of when I made my debut, it was in that time where cricket was going from a semi-professional era into a fully professional era. So over those next couple of years, eventually 2003, I think it was, the franchise era started, where that was also another step up into like fully professional. So over that sort of first 3 or 4 years of my career, I really saw that transition. I mean, in that first season, I mean, Adam Bacher was still, I think he was working for Alexander Forbes as his normal job and playing cricket simultaneously. And for myself, I mean, I was studying at university, taking a full-time course, but I could still play professional cricket. I mean, we were getting paid and everything, so we met that definition. But yeah, I mean, all the lessons that you learned with that, the time management, the discipline to do things in terms of your training. You didn't have all day just to go to the gym and do whatever you wanted. You had an hour because you had to go back to work or you had to go to varsity or whatever. So I think that really helped. But yeah, in terms of carrying yourself and conducting yourself, some really good role models. And you try to take bits and pieces from different people. Try to stay true to yourself, try to stay authentic, but you pick up on certain things. I mean, there were things that Adam Bacher taught me that were integral to not just the cricketer I became, but the person I became, and how you go about it, how you treat sponsors, how you deal with the media, all of those things are very important parts, because I think all too often we see these really talented cricketers and sports people in general, whose, let's call it, soft skills let them down, and then they're in the news for the wrong reasons, or they rub someone up the wrong way, and all of a sudden a sponsorship deal falls through, and it can create a lot of turmoil for young players. So I think those other skills are just as important as a cover drive. I always used to say, character over cover drives wins every day. So,
and if we stick with that line of thought, I was thinking of it when I was going back on the transcript of that conversation we had a couple of years ago, and I realized something you said but never wrote about, that people will look at you and Ryan and say, these are legacy cricketers, they're sons of a former international, but you were in actual fact sons of two teachers. Your mom was a teacher, your dad was a teacher. There wasn't any professional cricket. Your dad had to take leave if you wanted to go to play in the UK. So let's go back to that time, because it's so different now. The son of an opener, the son of a Ryan Rickleton, has very, very different experiences to what you went through as child of a teacher.
Yeah, I mean, and I loved every bit of it. Ever since growing up, the game of cricket has given me everything I could possibly want. Through Dad, it allowed me to travel the world, to see the world, to play on the banks of the Wanderers, to access the change room. I mean that's another thing from a different era. I mean, as kids, the young Mackenzies and Cooks and Jennings, and we used to run around the change room there. I mean, that was sort of a normal Saturday for the, what was it, the Mean Machine at the time, you know. So yeah, I think a very different era. But yeah, Mom and Dad as teachers growing up there, I think that brought with it its own lessons, and they always sort of really reinforced this whole person, this whole 360-degree person development, rather than just be a great sports person. And I think Dad probably knew just how hard it was going to be and how the odds are actually stacked against you making it, really. I mean, for all the nature versus nurture debate, like what are the odds that, two generations were going to both go on. So I think he knew how difficult it was going to be. I mean, he really sort of always pushed, the academics, the trying different sports, the cultural activities. And so I got a very wide and varied upbringing. I mean, you speak about the time, the years my dad went to Somerset and we went over there. I mean, Mom homeschooled us during those years. So, but we got fantastic life opportunities. We got to travel around England, all that historic stuff that sparks different things in you. We got to travel to Europe. We got to, you learn in a different way. And I mean, it's not for everyone. I certainly wouldn't say that, but yeah, I think it gave me a pretty unique sort of upbringing. And yeah, I suppose, I mean, as to your question about, whether, one generation has an effect on making the next generation more likely. I think pros and cons. I think there were many things that having Dad as who he was helped me, gave me a foot in the door. That coach who maybe wouldn't have batted an eyelid to you at under 13 trials, looked up above the clipboard because, oh, this is Cook's son. Let's see if he's got anything. So at least you got looked at rather than ignored and you hit a great cover drive and the selector didn't even see. I had just as talented friends who maybe just didn't get that opportunity. But then on the downside, there was obviously a huge pressure and expectation. You'd walk in and all the boys from the other school and all their parents, oh, let's see what this Cook can do. And you have this weight of expectation of that you were going to just be, this international quality cricketer at age 12. And I mean, I physically, I was actually quite a small sort of boy before I went to high school. And we all know at that level, I mean, often physical size trumps sort of skill and natural ability. The big boys bowl faster, hit harder. And I really struggled in sort of that phase, age 12, because I'd hit 25 great shots and I'd get 25 singles because I couldn't hit it for 4. I wasn't strong enough. So, yeah, that was quite a tricky time until I obviously got physically bigger and could actually get the value for shots. So, but good memories growing up, and yeah, wouldn't have changed a thing for the world.
One of the downsides of being the son of Jimmy Cook, if I remember correctly, was in 2008, Jimmy comes through. He's an assistant coach at Gauteng. And because he's that person, he's that dude who doesn't want to do the wrong thing. He doesn't want to seem to be favoring you, your son. And so he goes on the extreme. He doesn't want to be seen to be picking you because you are his son. And all of a sudden, he almost, not totally, but almost forgets about you as a cricketer.
Yeah, I went through a little bit of a tricky time. I mean, it was always, yeah, I suppose it's a very thin line that you tread. I mean, I think a lot of dads and sons are not the best coach-player combination. I think I see it time and time again. It's too close. The frustration. The kids don't listen to dad. Something that a coach would say, they feedback a lot better. But my situation was a bit different with my dad in that he remained my sort of primary, we'll call it coach for a long time, and then probably more mentor after a period. But he was my go-to guy. I mean, I was sitting there struggling in Australia as a 34-year-old, in my test career. He was the guy I picked up the phone to phone. I had great coaches around me and take nothing away from them. But, when you're really under that pressure, you go to the person that trust the most and knows you the most. Because in the end, it wasn't about the technique. It was about a mindset. It was about knowing the person. It was about being reassured that you're good enough. I wasn't going to go and overhaul my technique as a 34-year-old in the middle of a test series. That wasn't really what was going to be the answer. So I mean, you speak about 2008 and when Dad was involved with the Lions, and I mean, it was great in some ways, in that like I could actually just work with him sort of openly. It wasn't like I had to go sneak out on a weekend to go have a net with Dad. So I mean, that was good. It was just a tricky time in general. I was trying to find my way in how to play white ball cricket. White ball cricket was starting to evolve and change and become a bit more aggressive. And I hadn't quite worked out my way of playing. I had a really successful early white ball career. Almost in that era where you had that bat through opener who could just go and bat for 130, 140 balls, anchor the innings. And I'd been successful at that. And then the era started changing and you needed to be a bit more dynamic than that. And I went a little bit too aggressive too soon. And so, people started saying, oh, maybe he's not quite a white ball cricketer. And I didn't play much white ball cricket. Just focus on your 4-day cricket. And so I went through a bit of a stage where it was a little bit tricky, but came through that in the end. That's part of the great journey of life. And that's what I love about cricket is it's this analogy of life. You go through these ups and downs, and if it was all easy and plain sailing, there wouldn't be a story. So I look back now; it's probably easier to look back with hindsight, but they were all part of your development, all part of your story, and So I don't. At the time, it was frustrating, but no, now looking back, it was okay. It was all meant to be.
You mentioned the tour to Australia. I was trying to save that for later. Let's talk about that. You scored an amazing century. And what was amazing about it for me is when I look back and I look at the reports around that test and around that series, is how one moment you go from this guy whose technique is being questioned to this guy whose approach is praised. What was it like for you, Stephen Cook, 34-year-old? The press is hammering you on one hand, you just focusing on your game, and then these days when we write about it, we say he answered them with a century, but that's not really what happened. You just went out and played the game.
Yeah, I mean, to look back with a bit of hindsight, a bit of distance, sometimes that does wonders for the clarity of mind. I mean, I was playing for South Africa as a pretty mature player to make his debut. I mean, I played 160, 170 first-class games already when I made my debut. And I had a quirky technique. That was just how I was. I think playing on wickets at Wanderers that had nipped around for years, I sort of found a way to sort of survive and get through your sort of 5 home games every year. And so my technique wasn't classical. It had morphed a lot. And went to Australia, and I mean, they had a seriously good bowling lineup. I mean, Hazelwood, Stark, Lyon, Siddle, whoever that put out was a serious attack. And in those first 2 tests, Perth I got knocked over in the first test. Stark got me, and I'd done such diligent preparation for that tour around facing Stark, because left armers had really troubled me throughout my career. That was sort of my Achilles heel. It was quite an open secret. And so I was obviously preparing for this left arm pace that was going to swing it back in. And Stark ended up getting me out twice in the first 2 tests with balls that didn't swing. They just angled across me. I was playing for the in swing and I kept nicking off. And I was a little bit thrown by that. And I mean, it's easy to say, oh, you block out all the noise. I mean, it's very difficult when the noise is the great Shane Warnes and Mark Taylors and all of those guys are picking apart your technique. Like, basically on your days are numbered here. This guy is going to get eaten for breakfast, and Stark's all over him. And I mean, he was. It's nothing to shy away from. And the third test was going to be the pink ball test. And we'd actually gone on that tour earlier, and we played a practice game against the pink ball. and I couldn't see it at all. I had swung around corners. I couldn't see the seam. I was like, this is going to be a recipe for disaster. I'm not in the greatest of form. Stark and these guys are now going to bowl at me under lights with this glowing pink ball, and the good luck, Stephen. So I was pretty much prepared that was the last test of my career. I think I probably wouldn't have got to that test if it had been a home series and there'd been a natural opener to replace me. They might have picked a Markram or a Hannah Kun or someone like that then. But the sort of third test on tour, we'll let Cook have his swan song and off we'll go into the good night, as they say. And I went out there that third test in Adelaide. And you talk about perspectives, and my wife and daughter were on that part of the tour. And my daughter was little; she wasn't even 2 yet, and sleeping horribly and jet lagged and everything like that. So not only was I going to embark on a day-night test match for the first time, but I was doing it on minimal sleep, because by the time I was going to get back to the hotel, she was getting up for a feed in the middle of the night, and it was a nightmare. But perspective's everything, and she smiled at me and was loving Dad. She didn't care whether I was averaging 5 in the series or 100. So there was something leveling about that, and I very much got into the state of mind that it's probably going to be my last test, but let's enjoy it. Like, when else are you going to get to play in a pink ball test in Australia in front of 45,000 people? And I gave my old man a call, because that's what we would do. We would chat a lot, and he said, "No, don't go and change anything. So many people have got so many different ideas. It's not really going to work." And I always had a very firm theory on no quick fixes. If I was going to make a change to my technique, it was going to be long term, and there was a reason. It was well thought out, and it was going to be practiced. And he said, "You've got so far not doing quick fixes, so don't do a quick fix." And all I changed in my mind is that I just took the pressure off myself. I said, Stark's going to get hundreds and hundreds of test wickets. This guy, I mean, it's come true. I mean, you could tell he was going to be a guy who plays 100 tests and gets 400 plus test wickets. There's no harm. And I took that fear of like almost getting out away. Like he was expected to get me out. This pink ball that was going to swing. And it was really early on in that pink ball test. He swung one back in, hit me on the pads, plumb in front. Umpire's finger goes up, and off I walked. And the fourth umpire stops me and says they're just checking for no ball. And there the slow-mo comes down, and Stark's foot is like over by millimeters. And now I'm called back. And there was, I won't lie, there was a part of me that was like, I don't know if I want to go back. I mean, we were under huge pressure. The abuse was coming at me left, right, and center. I mean, they were all over me, as they should. I mean, the blood was in the water, so to speak. And I went out there, and I was like, really, now I'm on borrowed time. Now I am on completely borrowed time. And I managed to get 40 odd in the first innings. And you just find that little bit of rhythm, and you find something. And then came out in the second test, and second innings, and I got that 100. Definitely one of my favorite moments of my career. There's lots of hundreds, lots of innings that I can't remember that if you pulled up, I wouldn't have been able to tell you much about now down the line. But I remember every single minute of that innings. That was Test cricket. When people talk about the toughness of Test cricket, that was it. Proper bowlers, proper that banter, that hardness. The Aussies were there. They had everything to play for. It was just a fantastic couple of days. No sleep because my daughter slept terribly, but it made it all the much better because I had 100 at the end.
And when you look at that part of your journey, that part of it, and you look at a modern cricketer, yes, things are opening up a bit. We are now a lot more open to the idea of this is important, but it's not everything. This is a part of your life, 1/3, maybe 1/4, 1/8, because you are many other things outside of that. But in the past, it always felt like there was this burden thrust on professional cricketers to say, this is your life. You have to treat this. It was sacrosanct. But then now we are learning that, yes, it's important, but it's not the end all be all. How important is that to a professional athlete.
Yeah, really, really important. I think it goes back to your earlier question about sort of growing up and mom and dad trying to create a well-rounded and multifaceted person, who could survive the ups and downs. And I suppose that always helps. The adage that this will not define me. I'm not defined by whether I score 0 to 100 today. I am who I am. There's a lot of other things to me. And I think that's held me in good stead. And I think it would be good advice to any athlete. I mean, yes, I think sport and professional sport is changing and constantly changes. Some things for the better, some things not necessarily. But in terms of cricket, the opportunities that are available to players these days is just fantastic, And if you have one bad series or something doesn't quite go your way, there's so much cricket. And I mean, I suppose that's a pro and a con. There's a lot of cricket, but you can turn it around very quickly. You can be properly out of form. I mean, I don't know. I'll just pick an example. You could be an Aidan Markham. You could be out of form. You could be battling along, in white ball cricket or in the leagues, whatever. Now you get a test match. Now it's all of a sudden different. You score some runs and things change, or vice versa. Whereas the longer you go back in cricket history, almost the less games there were, the more practice there was, the less games. So, I mean, I think back earlier, especially early in my career, I felt like if I didn't score runs, it was such a long time until I got to bat again and prove myself that every innings, you didn't want to give it away. You held on to that performance and you put yourself under a different pressure. Whereas now I feel like you almost need to quickly forget. I mean, I look at our SA20. I mean, the guys are playing, 10, 12 games over a month. You've got to quickly put your highs and lows aside. If you score a great 100, in fact, just 2 days later, you're playing again. You've got to reset and come again. If you've got naught, you've got to say, cast it away. I'm going to be positive. I'm going to be aggressive. I'm going to score runs. So, yeah, I think the pressures are different. There's obviously a lot more money in the game, which does change things. As much as people say it doesn't, it does. And again, sometimes for the good, sometimes for the bad. But yeah, I think that adage that this will not define me. There's so many things to being a cricketer, and it probably goes a step further into one's transition after you're a cricketer. I think for people who being a professional cricketer defines them and it's their identity, find it very hard to stop playing. Even if they've got all the money in the world and that isn't the pressure, there's something there in that transition that's difficult. Not that all transitions aren't difficult in their own way, but I think if your identity is so tightly wrapped up in the fact that you're a cricketer, a professional cricketer, and I've been lucky in that I never defined myself as that. And then so post playing, that didn't change. I could wake up the next morning after having stopped and I could continue with everything else.
And that was also part of your job at first, trying to see, like before SA20, when you were with Saka. Remember your role, I think, in some ways I might be forgetting the details here, but your job with Saka at the time was to try to help cricketers, navigate the post-match part when it came about, setting them up with education and things like that.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I'm very grateful for the time I spent at Saka post my career. I think it allowed me to see the game from a multifaceted point of view. And I think it's good that cricketers almost have that narrow view. I think to create elite performance, it's good that there's not too much noise and they don't know what's going on in the background. But certainly Saka allowed me to see the game from a number of perspectives. And in many ways opened the door for the SA20 opportunity, and now how I get to see the game in a far different way. I mean, I often say to people, if every time I marked my guard as a player, I knew what I knew now about what goes on around the game, there's no ways I could have been as focused as what I was. There would have been too much noise, and so maybe that's a good thing that I didn't know. But yeah, that time at Saka was really important from that point of view. I was close enough to playing that I knew the players and I had good relationships with them, and I'd share change rooms with and played against a lot of them. And yeah, just to try and help them work through those other areas of their life. And I mean, Saka does an amazing job at that. Their whole sort of player education piece, be it bursaries and studying, to life skills to, all the cricket education. The support is endless. But yeah, that I think if I wasn't involved directly in cricket, that whole player transition from professional sport, be it whatever sport, I think the sports code just changes, but the identity and that post playing is difficult for everyone, because it's a complete reset. You go from being, top of the world to really sort of trying to figure out who you are, what you do. And for some, there's a huge financial problem that comes along. You go from being a top earning contract to, that falls off the cliff the other side. So for some, it's financial. For some, it's identity. For some, it slips into substance abuse. For there's countless things that can go wrong. And I think what I've always been fascinated with is how we, and I say we, I'm using professional sports people as a sort of general, get the set of skills that is not obviously translated to business or the world outside of sport, but it is. And I think it's helping people to come to terms either for themselves or with various other stakeholders in their lives of how to translate that. Because, in sport, you deal with pressure. You have to be disciplined. Often leadership is a key role in professional sports. People who've made it, 15, 20 years in the game. They've probably been a captain. They've probably held a leadership position. There's a tactics. There's a strategy. There's you've sat in team meetings and worked out strategies. All of those things are applicable to businesses. Yes, the content changes. You might be running a factory, or you might be, whatever the case is, but those things are still there. And so I think when players can learn to use those skills and use that confidence, that helps the transition so much more. And I think back now and I cringe at like all the sponsor cocktail parties that one goes to, and the invites to the golf days, and all that sort of stuff as a sportsman, you're regularly doing, and how often the players all sit in this little clump in the corner, all chatting to each other, almost like no one else here would want to talk to me. Meanwhile, there's CEOs, there's captains of industry who are there at those functions, those golfers, who are dying just to chat to that player. And there's so much of a skills transfer that's sort of missing there. As a player, if you can just build up that little bit of courage and go across to that CEO of that company who's just, sponsoring your team or has got a front of jersey logo or whatever, they're dying for a conversation. And the doors that you can open there, can make that career transition after cricket so much easier. Because if you're not playing with that burden of what am I going to do when this all ends, if you know that you're going to be okay, with it because you've studied or you've got a business or you've got other interests, it must make it so much easier to play carefree. And that's when you really see exceptional performance, when people play with a light mind.
You have remained in touch with the game from the time you retired. I think you did a bit of coaching, but there's a rumor that is running around in my head that you're probably the least talented coach in the family. Jimmy has done wonders. Ryan is doing wonders with the Netherlands. What about you? Why didn't you pursue coaching for much longer?
It's a good question. Yeah. So post playing, listen, I love coaching. I really do. I more than I love coach. I love the game of cricket. I love the strategy of it. And so coaching it taps into that beautifully. There's the strategy of how to score runs, how to get batters out, tactically what to do. I love that part the most. So there's an element of coaching that I love. And who knows, one day that might be something I go back into. And I did a bit of it privately. I never really did much of it as into a team setting. But I do think it's something that I could do. But I found let's call it administration. It's not. I don't think that word is always has the right sort of connotations, and it's a bit general. But that administrative side of cricket was arguably where I felt I could make the biggest difference with the skill sets I had. And that's really where I poured my energy. And the more I poured my energy into that, the less time I had to coach and pursue that. It was the same with the commentary. I'd also dabbled in the commentary a little bit, and eventually got to a stage where it was a little bit more difficult to do. Moved across to SA20 and became a real full-time, thing to do. But yeah, I think talk about the family and coaching. I mean, Dad, still to this day, he's coaching away, coaches the kids. He lives down in Cape Town now, works with Gary Kirsten at his academy there. He absolutely loves it. And Ryan, really proud of what he's done. I think it can be really difficult for a player who didn't play first class cricket to then become a coach of a national team. There are good examples, but they're far more past players who become coaches in those roles. So I've been really proud of what he's done. He's worked incredibly hard to get there. It certainly hasn't been an easy road for him. So yeah, I'm really proud of him, because I think he might not admit it, but having a dad who played international cricket and then an older brother who sort of, at least to a point was a provincial cricketer and then a national player, it must have been difficult, because the expectation must have been even a step more so than it was for me. So for him to sort of identify quite early on that, maybe the playing side isn't for me, although I do think if he had really put his mind to it, he possibly could have had a good career in cricket. But he understood that he loved the coaching element probably more than the playing, even as a young guy. And he's really thrown himself into that. So yeah, I think coaching, as a last sort of point on this, I think coaching is something that sometimes players think they can just go into because they played the game well. A good player doesn't make a good coach. It helps. It certainly helps. You can relate a lot better to that player who's struggling or succeeding or whatever they're doing. But I think there's a lot of skills that need to be learned along the way, and I think those make often the best coaches, the guys who can marry those two skills together. But I think your assessment of the least successful coach in the bunch, definitely, I'll go with you on that one.
And one of the things that I think about whenever I go on LinkedIn is your name pops up, you've posted something, and director of cricket operations. What does that entail? I'm sorry, but I just don't know how to decipher that.
Don't worry. I sometimes have to decipher that too. Every morning, it feels like anything and everything some days. No, it's a nice, wide, diverse portfolio. And that's what I really love about it, is I've got to learn, like I said, so many different things about all facets of the game. Because I joined, obviously, the league in its infancy, there was only a handful of us. I think we only had 6 or 7 of us in that first season. So you sat in on every marketing meeting and every sponsorship thing, drive, and PR. You started learning the game from every angle, and that was really cool. Not to say that I do a lot of that now. I mean, we've changed a lot over the last 3-4 years. I mean, I knew where every billboard was going to be in the first season. Now, if you told me, I probably wouldn't have the first clue. But yeah, in terms of cricket operations, everything that has to do with the players, firstly. So one side of my job is all of the player contracts, the auction, all the player regulations, like how we put together the league, all of that sort of stuff from a playing point of view. That's in my portfolio, and a huge part of my job, and arguably the part that I love the most. Coming up with your player regulations for your auction, which ultimately dictates the strategy of how teams go about putting together their teams. If you allow a wild card, how does that impact this? If we bring in an under 23 player, how does it affect how the teams will select? What does it do to the pipeline? All of those sorts of things. So again, that's word strategy that comes to mind again. So that's a huge part of it. Then everything that you sort of would see on the field of play during a game of cricket. So if it's pitches, if it's umpires, if it's all of that sort of stuff, if it's technology, the umpires, the stumps, all of that sort of stuff, that all fits into my portfolio. And then branching off that, then things that sort of slightly more on the periphery, but still very much in my world. Obviously, the medical stuff like that. We've got Dr. Ramji as our chief medical officer, but he works alongside me on that piece. And then all of our anti-corruption, the anti-doping, all of that sort of stuff, and then all the playing regulations, the rules, all of that sort of stuff, and then how that then integrates into the rest of the business. So obviously there are huge dependencies from broadcasters and stuff like that. So obviously I work quite closely with SuperSport in terms and GeoStar as our broadcasters. So that's another part of the job. And then there's just I suppose the normal part of being management. So yeah, a nice full portfolio. So every day is slightly different. And then during the competition, I get really operational. I probably shouldn't, but I love it too much. I get stuck in there on match day, and I'm on the ground and making sure things tick. So yeah, a lot of fun, and a great organization to work for. I mean, to work with Graham. I mean, we opened the batting together at high school 25 years ago. So to work alongside him, I think that's proper leadership. He's a visionary of the game, of where it's going. And to walk alongside him and assist him is fantastic and a real honor.
And high school, how did you get into CAS?
Sure. I suppose, age 12, 13, when you're making the decision of high school, I've shown some good talent. I think I've made most of the provincial sort of under 11, under 13 teams. And Dad knew sort of like the chances and the opportunities that were created out of going to a place like CAS. Number one, great facilities. Two, great coaches. But I think thirdly, being amongst other good players. Sort of with an iron sharpens iron. You're going to very quickly find out whether you were just a good A team at your primary school, because I saw many guys who were A team at their primary school end up in the C's. So I think it was going to be this like watershed moment. If you could sort of crack it there, then you were going to be okay. And I remember going to the open day, and it was actually the whole rugby. I mean, it was one of those the rugby derby days. It was a Jeppy Kes. There were probably 10,000 people, and I was like, wow, this seems like a great place to go to school. And I think wrote the entrance exam and got in, and it was a bit of a commute. So I thank my mom and dad for getting me across town. It wasn't exactly the local high school, and I didn't board, so there was a lot of time spent in the car. I think a really pivotal sort of part of that development. And as I often say, schools, so often kids go to a school because dad went there, because mom went there, and not because that's the right school for them. And I think I got lucky in that, my dad didn't go to CAS, but he identified that he thought that was somewhere where I would be able to succeed, because it wasn't for everyone, but it was right for me. And so I think that played a big role.
One thing that I kept thinking about, you mentioned that you called your dad when you were in Australia. Couldn't get this out of my mind. And he has always been your primary coach. You would have your coach at the Lions, but your dad was your primary coach. And it's a thing I keep thinking about. Devil Bravis went to Stellenbosch to meet with Dion Bortes when he was struggling for form just last December. That's his primary coach. If we distill everything else, he has his coaches everywhere else, but he trusts Dion Bortes to give him the facts as they are, and he knows this guy has my best interests at heart. Do you think, with the way cricket is evolving, that we are reaching a point where, because there are so many coaches in so many leagues and people have to listen to so many people, that it just might be the best thing for cricketers to behave more like tennis players? You have your coaching, and then when you join the team, you do what the team requires. You listen to the coaches there, but you still fall back on your primary coach.
I think that question has got so many different facets to it, and there's so many things you could go into off the back of that. It's a fascinating point. I think the more cricket moves towards players being free agents, the more I think you're going to definitely see that sort of tennis model. We've already seen it done really successfully in South Africa. Faf du Plessis has been a great example of a guy who effectively was free agent and has managed to play in a lot of leagues and played really well, arguably some of the best cricket of his career. So it certainly can be done. It's difficult to do. I think Dwayne Pretorius is another good example of a current player who's almost done that. Your example is perfect. The tennis player model, where you've got your own coach and your own trainer and your own and you're your own little business unit. And Dwayne Pretorius has basically done that. I mean, that's what he's worked out for himself, and he's still doing well in the leagues. I mean, in the CPL, he just had a fantastic CPL. So now got another SA20 contract, and so really in a good position, having gone in that free agency. So I do think that's already happening, and I think will be the model of how it potentially happens. Noise, too much noise can be just as bad as the best advice. I think whether it's a filtering, and I think that's what the best players do, they filter that information.
Mm-hmm.
A very well-meaning coach dumps 10 different ideas in their head, and they're able to sift through those and work out, actually, there's 8 that I need to ignore here. It was all well meant, but 8 is not for me. These 2 little gems are for me. I'll incorporate those. And those are the guys who probably grow the quickest. The guys who can filter out what's really important for them. Having said that, a lot can be said for a coach there in the moment. I mean, much like a senior player that I spoke about earlier on, who's actually seeing you where you're at. And I think coaches with good EQ, and we've seen the successful franchises through coaches through that, like a Stephen Fleming. Clearly, there's something about. I mean, I've never worked with him, but you can see there's something about the environments, whether it's CSK, JSK, where he's able to get the best out of players, and they want to be there. And I think that's really the success, particularly in T20 cricket, is you get your players a couple of days before the event. You've got to somehow galvanize them into this winning unit, and off they go. And there's not a lot of coaching that's going to be done there in the moment if you're in the sort of starting lineup. It's more if you're a fringe player that you're probably getting more the benefit of the coach in that world. So, I think the role of the coach is potentially different. I think what coaches have to know now is a lot more diverse than what they did previously. I think they're getting pulled into a number of other conversations. As much as they are now specialist coaches, I think there is also diversity in that as well, ironically.
Whom, besides Adam Baha, I think you opened the betting with him when you were younger, until his retirement. But besides him, because I would assume because he had this much impact on your development, you would put him out there. But besides Baha, who was the ideal betting partner for you in your playing days?
I mean, so certainly Adam in those first few years, I think he was fantastic for me. And then Neil McKenzie through the sort of middle part of my career. We played a lot of cricket together for the Lions, and not just his batting, just how he went about it. He's got a great sense of humor. He's a great team man, a great guy to have around the dressing room. Tactically very astute. A bit too superstitious, but we'll forgive him that fault. But no, certainly as a guy that I love to bat with, always calm, always had a plan, and I learned a lot from him. And probably the guy that I most enjoyed batting with across my career.
And besides that, I think you once shared with me that he probably was the one guy who knew how to communicate with you, to just, when you needed that little nudge in a good direction, he knew how to get through to you. Like the story that you once shared, that at one point he had a discussion about your runs as an opener.
Yeah, I mean, so part of that is being able to have the honest conversation. You develop that relationship, that trust, that to be able to have the hard conversations. because otherwise you don't grow. And yeah, I mean, the story that you alluded to, I was a couple of years into my first class career, and I was doing okay. I was averaging 30 odd, and getting the occasional 100 here and there. And we used to get these. I mean, I think you still even get them. You get these like stats packs that the media get given, that Andrew Sampson and team all put together. And there was this copy that had found its way into the Centurion dressing room. And we're sitting there after play the one day, and I'd probably got a pretty 30 and got us to 60 without loss, and then nicked one, chasing a wide one as I usually did, or fell over and got out LBW. And at the end of the day's play, he just very quietly came to me, and in the nicest possible way, said to me, have a look here, look at these stats. And I looked at them and saw I was averaging 31 or whatever it was. And he said, you know that in 2 years' time, if that number's still that's the end of your career. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, no, you're averaging 30 and you've played 60 first-class games. You're not the young guy in the team anymore. You're not the, there's no endless run. At some point, you got to get this thing moving. And he said to me, if you really want to, be worth your salt, this number's got to be nearer 40, if not 40 plus. And in a very practical way, we mapped out that night at Centurion, we mapped out how to get that number to 40 over. And he's like, this is not going to happen overnight. This is going to be like a 4-year project to get this number to 40. And that was just that turning point. And a couple of the things that, we strategized around that day was, you're going to get a couple of noughts because you're an opener, you're batting at the Wanderers, you're facing the best bowlers with a new ball. That's going to happen. So we can't get rid of that altogether. We're going to try and minimize that. But when it's your day, when you get in, you've got to be absolutely ruthless and not give it away. Bat for tomorrow's runs, bat for the next game's runs, bat for the innings where you get a bad decision, bat for the, and that made such a profound difference, because I used to really consciously to get to 40 and go, right, that's today's runs. This innings average 40 taken care of. Now I've got to clear this backlog of 4 or 5 years of averaging 30. Now I've got to clear that. And I used to just plow on. So I wasn't one of those guys who get to a milestone and now all of a sudden I was going over the top, or I try a sweep here or whatever. I'd almost pull it back even more and go, okay, I'm starting again. And in some ways, it maybe curtailed a little bit of my flair, and turned me into a little bit, probably too much of a boring conservative batsman. But it allowed me to be successful. And maybe if I'd had a slightly better start and not had to pull it back, things would have been different. But yeah, so that conversation and that honesty is so important. And for him to know that that's the right thing to say then, and that's knowing people.
And that's the art of having the hard conversation, isn't it? Because I think a lot of the time, the term hard conversation has this connotation that it has to be confrontational. It has to be all sorts of, the term hard in itself has this picture that it presents. And yet it's a hard conversation because you are discussing a hard topic, and it's how you help each other out as you go forward.
No, exactly that. Hard in that, and it was going to require hard work, and the answers weren't easy to come up with. It was going to take some effort to work out how to do this, because you're right. It's easier. So let's take the opposite of the hard. It's easier to just say, unlucky today, you'll get them next time. Be positive, take the positive option. And sometimes that's what you do. I mean, I'm not saying that you've got to be tough all the time. But sometimes that, and it doesn't have to be loud and aggressive. And like that's, I think, what you're alluding to. You're thinking of the rah coach. What have you done? Why did you do that? That's sometimes not, that's an easier conversation. That's actually a cop-out. Just throw some, raw emotion at it. Everyone acts like something's been done, and you think, as a coach, yeah, I did good there. I showed him, he'll never do that again. Of course he's going to do that again. I mean, that's not going to get through to 90% of guys. Because actually it takes an internalizing. I mean, take it away from sport even. You can have the best meaning advice. If you don't internalize it and work out and actually deal with it, the best advice means nothing. I mean, we can, in this age of where we're at with technology, information and advice is at our fingertips. We can turn on pretty much any YouTube clip and find out anything we want to find out about anything. But it's what you do with that's what really counts. I mean, I can go and listen to 10 crypto podcasts. Not going to make me a crypto expert just by listening to 10 podcasts, but if you went and did the research and went and did the hard work and internalized it, and then arguably you could become skilled at something like it. I mean, I picked something purposely obscure just to demonstrate, but I think it's just as true for sports people and cricketers.
Who was the most difficult bowler you had to face in your career, or whom you feel, we don't know the stats, but whom you feel just had your number each time you faced them?
Okay, so a little multifaceted. Number one, anyone who bowled left arm was fair game. You didn't have to be particularly good. You just had to bowl with your left hand. That was normally good enough for me. Stark, Bolts, I don't know. Anyone else there, they were good enough for me. But no, in all seriousness, Dale Steyn was the best bowler I played with and against. He had it all. If he wanted to bowl absolutely rapid, he could. If he wanted to just pull that pace back and get it to swing in shape, he could do that. If he wanted to get it to reverse, he could bowl some of the best reverse swing. He could turn that aggression on and off as he needed to be. Highly skilled, and someone that I always felt, could turn a game at any stage. So definitely the number one for me, Steyn.
And can we say, if you had a nightmare match, it had to be at his hands at some point?
I'm sure. I mean, a lot of the time, you probably look back at this and you might be able to look through the stats and say, actually, he didn't get you out that many times. He might not have. We might not have actually played against each other that much. I mean, he was probably playing more test matches, but certainly in the tussles that I did, I felt like he had absolutely everything against me. So, I mean, not to say that some of the others that I faced weren't incredible. And sometimes it also makes a difference when you face someone, at what point in your career, on what wickets, where they were at form-wise, So sometimes you can get a little bit lucky. There's sometimes bowlers you maybe didn't get to face the absolute best of, or they didn't have a great day when they bowled against you. But I mean, there was a game we played. It was the 2003 World Cup, was in South Africa, and it was Gauteng. We played a warm-up game against Pakistan, and that bowling attack that day was phenomenal. They had Wasim Akram and Waka Yunus open the bowling. They then had Shoaib Akhtar and Mohammad Shami first change after that, and then Afridi to bowl some spin with Abdul Razak. There was just nowhere to hide. I was like, I don't know, 21 years old at the time. And that's when I thought to myself, I don't know if I can play international cricket, because I don't know if I can do this every week. This is okay for a once-off, but yes, if I'm going to do this every week, life's going to get tough. So, as a whole attack, that was probably the one.
One thing I forgot to ask about earlier was dealing with poor form. You were never one for quick fixes, but sometimes when I watch guys play, I sometimes think that, it gets to their head, it becomes mental. You can't get the ball off the square. You try as much as you would. Maybe even in the nets, it feels good. You're hitting them. But then out in the middle, something is just not clicking. How did you deal with that? And today, if a player comes to you today, what would your advice be to them?
Definitely one of the hardest things to deal with, and something that I don't think I ever really. I didn't do it as well as I saw other people do it. you saw in Jacques Callis' ability to, if he scored a naught, to just completely reset. And, it seemed like they were never out of form, because even if it was one or two low scores, they would get 100 and then they'd be fine again, and the sort of the monkey would be off their back. I mean, I think no player is immune from it. And sometimes I think it depends when you go through it, that makes a difference. I mean, you mentioned Brevis earlier. I think he's been a fascinating sort of case study in that he really didn't fail much coming through the ranks. I mean, he had under 19s, he had the perfect start, got picked up in the IPL. Everything was going great. And the first time he really had a bit of a wobbly, let's just call it that, a little wobbly in his career, was in front of the whole world. And so you're scrutinized in a way, and you've never really practiced it. You've never really sort of had to go back to the drawing board. And in a way, what we've seen over the last sort of year has been fantastic for him, because he's gone back to the high school coach. He's found that rhythm again. He's got himself through that, and now he's thriving and flourishing. So, yeah, I think it sometimes makes a difference when it happens and how it happens and who you got around you. But yeah, I don't think there's a one size fits all approach. I think you've got to you've got to just know what works for you, know what your couple of key fundamentals are, and try to keep as clear a mind as you possibly can. And all more important now, where games come so thick and fast. Again, like I said, when I played, if you had 2 bad weeks, that was only 2 bad innings. Whereas now you can have a bad 2 weeks, it can be a bad 7 innings in 2 weeks. All of a sudden you're playing for your career, and it's only been 2 weeks of not scoring 100. You could have scored 100 15 days ago, and now you're fighting for your career because it was 7 innings ago. So that's also a challenge that comes with greater sort of formatting, scheduling, workload, etc.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for coming on. But before I let you go, this was specifically not meant to discuss SA20. But how excited are you for the schools SA20?
No, so schools SA20, we've just brought on board our title partner Switch. That's now Switch Schools SA20. Which we're really proud of. It's, I think, a really fantastic initiative. It's national, so it's not just where our 6 franchises are based. It's all 16 regions. It's boys and girls, which is great. I think I'm all for that. We're seeing the growth of the women's game, the growth in the professionalism, and we're really committed to growing that sort of base of players. And this is a fantastic opportunity. I think we've got over 200 girls' schools registered for this year's competition, so that's a great playing opportunity for them. And the diversity of who's playing in it is fantastic. You've got your independent schools, you've got your government schools, you've got the focus schools, you've got the CSA hubs. So we're really seeing the full talent pool all play. And it's playing opportunities. In the end, you can have as many nets as you want, but it's out there playing in a competitive game. And with Supersport schools on board, we're doing over 200 games are being streamed and broadcast across the season. So there'll be an exposure there for these players. It's the way of the modern player. You clip a couple of highlights reels of you smashing it for 6, and the next thing your name's in lights. And I think what's been really fantastic for us is that 2 of the players who played in the first edition last year, Bayanda Majola and JJ Basson, both got picked up in our main SA20 auction this year. The franchises sort of had identified them, and that's really encouraging, because as a young player, if you're 15 years old and you're trying to get into your school's first team, and you can see this line of sight that, hey, I play in my first team, I'll play here on TV. It only takes a couple of innings and someone sees me, someone scouts me. The next thing I'm playing SA20, or I get a provincial contract. Who knows? My life can change. All of a sudden, that pipeline looks a lot clearer. And then that cricketer, and let's face it, the guy or girl who's the most talented cricketer is probably the most talented football player or netball player or rugby player or hockey player. And it's for them it's almost for them to choose cricket. I mean, a lot of people sort of say to me, and I mean, I say it in jest, but they say sort of, where's our next crop of fast bowlers? I mean, where are these big tall guys, 6'5"? Well, some of them are playing basketball. unfortunately. Like, I mean, that's great for basketball, but, every 6 foot kid, I mean, particularly up in the sort of the Highveld region, basketball's massive. I mean, I'm pretty sure a couple of those guys could, with the right coaching, bowl 140 k's an hour. They've got the right physical attributes, and so you just need to be the sport of choice. But no, we're really happy with where we're going with our Switch Schools SA20. We have almost 1,000 games this season, so all in all, so a lot of hard work, but great to have a partner on board and a team that we've got amongst our staff and with CSA. I mean, I must add that obviously we rely heavily on CSA's youth coordinators, the member unions to support us on this. I mean, there's no ways that we as a team can reach all 1,000 games. So their input is really amazing too. So I must thank them for their involvement.
No, personally, I am excited because I cover it. So each time I watch it, I'm like, yes, this is very good. This is youngsters experiencing what it feels like to be in a competition. Some kids, as you say, for them, cricket is something they're good at, but they're not too fast about it if they make a career out of it or not. But now they're in this pipeline of sorts where they think, oh, this could be a step towards that. And so it's no talent lost.
Yeah, absolutely. No, very, very, very exciting time. And we're going to hopefully continue to see some amazing stories. I mean, Karaba Miso's 100 in last year's final. I mean, that was just the perfect advert. And then what she's done since, and now at a fully fledged Women's World Cup. I mean, those are just great stories, like and aspirational. If you're a young kid, you see that, you're like, that's what I want to be. I mean, that's how it was for me. I saw it from the banks of the Wanderers, and this might be someone seeing it on a stream on a cell phone, or walking past the school ground and saying, "Hey, I want to be there one day," or rocking up at a Proteas game or an SA20 game and saying, "That's my hero. That's what I want to be one day." I mean, that's what we're really there for. And if we can keep uplifting, well, we're going to create great players and we're going to create great fans, and so the whole cricket ecosystem will thrive.
Brilliant. Stephen, thank you very much for carving a chunk of your time to join me on Stumped.
No, it's been great. It's amazing how quick an hour can go by, and just talking about the game that we love. So all good. And I think big thanks to you and people who are passionate about covering cricket and giving it the sort of the airtime that it needs. So thank